Yeah, the girl boss phenomenon or the girl boss era. I've heard all sorts of terms on it, and I think it generally comes from this modern phase in film and TV that we're in, where there's a lot of characters, mostly female characters, I would say, that are not connecting to audiences.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm Reina Creole, of course, bringing you that spice to sci-fi and pop culture analysis. And speaking of spice, this is another episode of An Audience with the Queen podcast. This is where I find somebody out there in the YouTube interweb space, and I'm like, I need to talk to that person and grab them to appear on my channel. So I want to thank Retro Nerd Girl for introducing me to Douglas Burton, author of The Heroine's Labyrinth. How are you doing, my dear, and welcome?
I am doing great and even better now. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I've been looking forward so much to this conversation. It's one of those things where you see things kind of going on in pop culture, and I want to call it like the old man yells at cloud syndrome. You know how Grandpa Simpson, he's like, yelling at the cloud, and then there's the old man yells at cloud. That's what I think when I keep hearing this term girl boss.
Yes.
And I'm kind of like, well, I have a kind of a different idea of what that means, and it's not bad, and it seems to be used as a pejorative. And that's what
Yes.
kind of got my attention. It's either, oh, you see that trailer? Yeah, it looks like a total girl boss movie. I don't want to see it. Or I saw this film and the leading female character, she was such a girl boss and she just ruined the whole entire thing. And in some cases it's warranted, but
Right.
in some cases it isn't. And I'm thinking, did we watch the same film? And if we did, why is it there's this, I don't know if it's antagonism, is it discontent? Is it just, I feel in some way offended and insulted by it? But I'll say what I'm starting to pick up, and this is absolutely no judgment, this is the observation, you guys know
Sure.
me, of why does it seem that if there's, of late, we'll say probably within the past, maybe past 5 years, if there's a female lead character, especially in a science fiction or fantasy film, the consensus seems to be that it's just a girl boss, the woman who's just there to be better than everybody else, to be better than all the men, and give a lecture on why, the patriarchy is this, that, and this, that, and the other thing, and the studio can go, suck an egg and and
Yeah.
all of that. So it's an interesting phenomenon that I'm seeing. So as you've written this book, The Heroine's Labyrinth, which is quite interesting from the description that I hear, and I hear you talk about it on the interwebs and everything, wanted to bring you on the channel, one, to introduce people to you, and to delve a bit more into this concept of the girl boss, whether it's been invented, whether it's just been, birthed, whether it's there on purpose. But either way, that term is out there in the
Right.
pop culture lexicon. So I want to hear from you.
Yeah, the girl boss phenomenon or the girl boss era. I've heard all sorts of terms on it, and I think it generally comes from this modern phase in film and TV that we're in, where there's a lot of characters, mostly female characters, I would say, that are not connecting to audiences, and might even be slightly offensive or obnoxious. The other term is called OP, which means overpowered. And so I think there's a lot of audiences that are guarded against this and are suspicious of some of the movie studios, or they don't trust the movie studios delivering these films. So at first it was this wave of what the heck kind of a heroine is this? Kind of a shock from a lot of the audiences. And then there was kind of this rejection phase. So I think we're at the end of this rejection phase where audiences generally do not trust these studios. They do not trust Disney. They don't trust Pixar. They don't trust Lucasfilm. And so when Lucasfilm is like, here's your next show, and it has a female lead, audiences seem to be like this, unconvinced that this is going to be anything worth their time. And so now we're getting, I think, a reaction to that, where there's a push, and I think you're part of it, just from what you said, a push back against the immediate hatred or the immediate distrust of these movies or films or shows, where we need to give them a chance to see if they're going to pan out or not. We don't want to give them an unfair shake when they come out. So I tend to defend most of the fandom that is like distrustful. However, I also don't want to be part of a group that's losing its ability to tell the difference between a good quality show and one that's of poor quality. So I think we still need to be vigilant on that front, which it sounds like what you're saying as well, not to reject it at face value. I mean, is that right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of those things where it's like you can't really make a true judgment or an intellectually sound judgment on something you haven't seen or read. I'll have people say, well, it just looks like it's going to be a girl boss. It's just going to suck. Okay, well, you haven't seen it yet.
Right.
Nor have you heard from anyone who's seen it yet. So how can you make that judgment? Well, Hollywood just keeps doing this and it just keeps, doing this, and this is what I expect. But it's kind of like, okay, that's Hollywood's job, is to push things like that. But it's up to you to make the conscious decision. Am I going to make up my own mind, or am I just going to let past experience tell me what I think this is going to be?
Right. I do think we're at an inflection point where it's time to take down your guard a little bit and be ready to re-engage, because most of us, if whoever's listening, we're obviously all into pop culture. We're into great stories. We love the movies. We love these great iconic characters. So this is our area, So I want this area to be awesome as well, the pop culture space. So I'm operating from the basic theory that everybody wants great heroines. They want great heroes too, but since this is about girl bosses, I want to focus on heroic women in fiction. There's kind of the narrative out there from the media is that the fandom is a lot of men, and they are misogynistic and bigoted and hate female characters. And I think that is grossly overstated. I just don't think that's true. In the age of social media, any group is going to have its fringe toxic people that post ridiculous things on social media, that say the dumbest thing. So, I don't know anybody. There's baking channels that have this group of people. It doesn't matter, male, female. You're going to get someone on some thread saying something stupid at some point. But I think the overwhelming number of fans, especially male fans, do want and have enjoyed and appreciated and supported great heroines in the past. So to say that most of the fandom are despicable, misogynistic fan base, I think it's overstated and generally untrue, except for the most extreme cases. And and that most of us are lined up and ready to support great female characters. So I think from what you're saying, though, is that it's possible that we're so guarded against poorly written ones that we're not giving space for potentially new heroines to come in and fill that space in a positive way. So, and that might be true. You know, there is definitely a knee-jerk reaction to some of these things, and not all of them are panning out. I saw Inside Out Part 2 with my family the other day, and I loved it. It was a great film. There was no like girl bossing in there, and you know, so like there wasn't there, and I was a little skeptical going in, but I felt very rewarded coming out. It was a good movie, you know.
Yeah, I agree. That was one where my expectations were pleasantly subverted. There was the trailer that was put out there, and people had one idea, and then it turns out the film didn't even do that. It was something that was, I would say, selectively edited to give a different impression, and that's not what happened with the film in general. So I was glad that panned out. Didn't quite like what they tried to do with the marketing with that, but in the end, it was it was a good film. But one of the things that I definitely like to do on this channel when a term is getting thrown around is to come up with a definitive definition. What is it? So if, say, Merriam-Webster's dictionary had an entry for girl boss, what would you say a girl boss is?
So I think the basic idea is just a female in charge, right? That's the basic idea. But today, I think you nailed it. There's a pejorative slant to this term, which means an unlikable female character leading a role. I think that's in general how it's used in this space, in the pop culture space. So I just want to like preface this real quick. You know, criticism from me anyway comes from a place of love. You know, I've spent the last 4 years writing The Heroine's Labyrinth. I've been studying heroic women in fiction, from mythology to literature to modern films to modern shows, and there are a ton of awesome heroic women in fiction. So that's where this is coming from. It's aimed at, not at tearing down heroic women in fiction, but into separating what makes a good, well-written from a poorly written hero. I think that's still important. So, you know, and I'm sure you've seen these too. On the other side, there's memes like, it's just Star Wars. Why can't you just like it? That's like, well, if it's not good, don't tell me I have to like it. Like, I'm not obligated to like anything either. So it becomes more and more important to kind of figure out what we're talking about and to separate the good from the bad. So I think that's where I'm coming from. And I did take some notes on this, and I asked myself the exact question that what is a girl boss? Like in the pejorative sense, what do people mean when they say she's a girl boss? I don't want to watch it. And this is my best answer. I wrote these down. So I'm coming at this from a pop culture point of view. So what is a girl boss? In pop culture, a girl boss is a fictional female character who fails to achieve widespread popular success or a popular consensus. That's what I'm saying. It's meant to, that's what that is. It's a pejorative term. She's not going to be well received in a popular sense. And I have 4 criteria that I looked at in what kind of helps us define what a girl boss is. One, and I think this is the most important because this is where I think the big turnoff comes from in a lot of ways. One, the girl boss is created in the spirit of rectifying real or perceived social inequities. So she's designed in this spirit, and this is the subheader to this, often has dialogue assigned to that end, and is often defended in the media to that end. So I think that creates a division almost right off the bat and has turned off a lot of people. So I think that is one defining trait. And if people in a trailer think that this heroine is designed in the spirit of rectifying real or perceived social inequities, they will become turned off by this heroine without even giving her a chance. And to your point, that could be detrimental as culture tries to shift. 2 is perceived as wielding unearned ability, status, rank, or knowledge. I mean, this is we hear this all the time. How did she learn to do that? How is she beating up this guy when she has no formal training? How is she piloting this vessel and then also solving this mathematical equation and then defeating this guy in a boxing match? There's a sense that this doesn't seem like she could do all of this. 3, rarely experiences significant failure or disgrace. And 4, struggles with relatability to general audiences. That might mean that a small percentage of the audience is rabidly willing to defend this heroine, but in general, she's not connecting at the same level. So something's off, and there could be multiple reasons for this. And by the way, girl bosses are not the only characters that could be written that don't connect. This could happen to any character, male, female, alien. It does not matter. You can write a character that does not connect. But I think that is one of the traits of the negative girl boss, is that she doesn't relate to general audiences as well. So those are my 4 general criteria for why I think there's a negative term for girl boss, and how to define it, and how to recognize it specifically, as apart from a great heroine who's kicking ass and we love her, right? There's great ones out there that no one complains about.
Exactly. And that's kind of what piqued my interest eventually, after keep hearing this term girl boss over and over and over again. I'm thinking, there's movies with female heroines in it that I love. Case in point, Alien.
She's my number 1.
Love that. Seeing that completely just changed my life. Alien and Foxy Brown, actually, seeing Pam Grier as in that role when she was a cop. So I'm used to seeing women like that who were being cheered on, who were like, man, she's awesome. Whether you're playing Lara Croft in a video game, and loves
Right.
playing, the OG Lara Croft, not what people are trying to turn her into, like that. Sarah Connor in Terminator, seeing
total badass.
seeing her. Complete and total badass. And again, back to the movie Aliens with an S, in it. Yeah. Oh my gosh, and I can't believe it. Vasquez. She didn't have that much time on the screen, but I loved Vasquez. And so many people talk about how kick-ass Vasquez was in Alien. Yeah. Everybody knew who she was.
Yep.
So when I would hear things like, there's a female lead, it's gonna suck or whatever. It's just like, well, why? What concrete reason do you have for that? And in a lot of ways, especially in this pop culture space, which is predominantly male, you will get the people who are detractors who will start using that as ammunition. You don't like anything with women in it. You don't like anything with minorities in it. What's wrong with you? So that's the ammunition that they get given when this happens. So that's why I'm just like, how did we get here?
Well, again, I'm somewhat inclined to defend the general public as the consumers of pop culture. This is a response, I think, to overt messaging in stories. So there has been a spate of stories. And it's funny, when I started making a list and trying to kind of define and outline girl bosses or films that weren't connecting or didn't, there was so many. I actually could not believe the list that I was, and not all are bad. You know, it's a list with good and bad in it. But I was shocked. You know, so what we don't want, this is what I don't want, and I think most people would agree with this sentiment. We don't want to become anti-diversity, anti-woman, or anti-representation, but we don't want it to be weaponized against us either, or told that something is great when it's not. You know, don't tell me that this like Terminator Dark Fate was a terrible movie. And
I didn't even go and watch that. When I heard what happened, oh my gosh, I said, I can't. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it was, I got an early screening. This was like one of the only times and of course I was like, I'm not going to write, this is not going to be a glowing review. So I tried to find the good in it. And the good for me was that Terminator is a heroine-centric story world. You know, it's centered around Sarah Connor. And it moved after Terminator 2, it moved more toward Arnold. And those films did not do as well. So my point in the review was Sarah Connor's legacy is secure, because if anything, this film reminded me how freaking fantastic the first two films were, which were centered around her. And that this film does not live up to that legacy was my point. It does not live up to the Sarah Connor that came before. And in fact, and to my criteria that I wrote down there was dialogue assigned to rectifying social inequities in there. And they undermined the power and strength of Sarah Connor, who there is a streak of maternalism to her, which Dark Fate treated as somehow patriarchal or a negative or a bad thing. And I was like, I totally disagree. I'll tell you what, if Mama Bear is out there and I'm behind her and she's up against the T-1000, you know, she is it. You know, do your thing. You know, like I would, if Sarah Connor was defending me, I would feel very safe. I'll put it, same thing with Ripley. If Ripley's defending me, I'd feel very, I don't care if it's a queen alien across there. Like, I'm in good hands if Ripley's around. So, you know, great women, great heroic women in fiction. I don't care what their motivation is. Maternalism is obviously one that resonates with a lot of people. So I don't think we need to treat it like some sort of a negative thing. Just like paternalism could be a motivating factor for a male hero, protecting a child or a wife. Or if we rise to the occasion, awesome. We did something heroic. We did something unexpected and dangerous. And we did it for this selfless reason. Same thing with Ripley. Same thing with Sarah. I don't think those are negatives. So my point is, we've seen movies like Terminator Dark Fate where we hear heroines being like, oh, you know, you're just carrying a male and blah, blah, blah. And we're like, oh, God, like that's terrible. A, it's terrible dialogue. B, it goes against the grain of one of the power streaks of Sarah Connor. And two, it takes on the attitude that either A, motherhood is bad, or B, giving birth to a boy is bad. And so audiences are like, I'm out. Have fun, you know, with your Terminator franchise, because I'm not going to go along for the ride. And so I think after a string of these, certain guys and women too, by the way, will be like, oh God, looks like another one of those. And another one of those is the problem. So I think Hollywood dug this hole, and I think Hollywood is starting to attempt to try to dig out of this hole. And it sounds like you want us to help them do that for good reasons, for the good reasons.
Yes. Yes. It's like, let us show you how to start making money again. And at the same time, exactly, if they're interested, but it's just like, I'm pretty sure you guys like money. But at the same time, also giving those of us who've just been so beaten down by all of this some objective criteria to kind of take. I know it's hard. I know it's challenging. I know for me, it's like that. If there's a movie I really, really, really like, but I have to be objective and take it apart. Alien Romulus. But anyway, having to do that. Oh, the movie?
Yeah, I saw Alien Romulus last night. So here's a good example. There's no girl bosses in it. Did you think of it as a girl boss movie?
No.
No, not at all. Like I didn't get any sense of like girl bossing. And yet the movie wasn't that great. So it had nothing to do with I think it's a female lead. It had nothing to do with her. In fact, she was pretty decent in it. There was a few good acting performances, but ultimately the movie fell flat. And there are specific reasons why it did, but it had nothing to do with her. Absolutely nothing to do with her. I found zero fault with her. My biggest complaint with her was, and it has nothing to do with her, the actress, or even the writing. It has to do with the makeup department. She's supposed to be on this blue collar, harsh colony, a far off world, but she had like no blemishes. Her skin complexion was picture perfect. And I thought to myself, I was like, that's not convincing to me. I think she should look a little rougher. She's a roughneck, but like she's Gen Z and like I don't know. So I felt like they got themselves confused there, but that was my only complaint. It had nothing to do with her being OP. Like there was none of that. I didn't get that sense at all.
Yeah, neither did I. And even with watching that film, it's like I was of two minds. Of course, you can see the video on my channel. Two
I did. I
minds
watched it.
of yeah, I'm a sci-fi fan, but I'm also a horror fan, and it's kind of like trying to disassociate those two. And you've got this director who has a specific niche, and it's just like I can see why he went there, but you kind of lost folks, when
Well, I
when
think
you
I
went
will
there.
stay brief on this, but as a horror
Mhm.
film, the first maybe 60% of it was actually, I'd say the first 30% was excellent, even excellent. And then up to 60% was good. But as an Aliens film, they did things at the end that I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What?
I literally had to pick the needle up off the record moment.
Yeah.
And and I was just like, okay, I cannot let that slide. But overall, no, there was no girl bossing in,
No.
in that particular film. So one of the things that I do want to get to, and we may have to do a part 2 if we don't have enough time with this. One of the
Okay.
cool things that you did, and I like examples because for some folks who were just like, well, okay, that definition is all well and good and everything, but what do I do with it? So I like examples. So I'm very glad you came up with these. And it's several categories that we have of the girl boss, which you did provide. So I'm going to start with the first one. I'll read what it is and what you defined it as, and we can start talking about. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Real quick, can I just establish when I think this started?
Absolutely.
Because when you asked me, this is all like first draft thinking and writing things down. Because Lorena asked me to discuss this, and I realized that it's such a big topic, and it matters. I think there's culture wars going on. There's sides, and I think we're in that weird gray area where things might be changing, and I want to be part of the adapting crowd. I don't. I felt like it was good to condemn this stuff when it came out. I want to be part of the welcome wagon when this stuff comes back. So what's weird is when Lorena asked me about the Girl Boss, I was like, when did it start? When did it really start as what I would say is a major problem in pop culture? And I went back, and it's very clear when it started, because I started going through all the great films, or the top 100 films of every year. So this took a little bit of time. Went through all the films. I went through all the new releases. And I was having trouble finding girl bosses until 2015. 2015, I think, is the year that this started. The year that it started. And I thought about, when I looked at what happened in 2015 in terms of the pop culture content, I think a perfect storm helped cause this. So in 2015, you had two films that I think redefined prematurely the entire mindset of Hollywood. You had The Force Awakens, okay, in 2015, in which you had Daisy Ridley portraying Rey. At the time, there was no last name. It was just Rey. And This movie became the highest grossing film at the domestic box office in history. That is not a small accomplishment. That's the accomplishment. I mean, the top of the hill for all American history in film, Rey, Force Awakens. And there was a lot of hype for this.
I remember that.
Yes, if we go back to where we were mentally in 2015, we were mostly jacked about Star Wars. I remember I drive a lot for my job. I remember pulling over when that trailer dropped. I was like, put on the turn signal. And I was watching that trailer and I was like calling my friends on did you see the trailer? So like everybody was in on this. And I remember clearly how hyped everyone was. This was a pop culture moment in 2015. And it was good enough to get repeat viewing and keep a thrill. There's plenty of things to criticize in retrospect, but at the time, it drove its way to the top of the hill. #1 at the box office. And it's still, I think Endgame is up there now, but like it's still pretty much #1. So that said, women, because there was this general consensus that, female characters don't perform as well from a demographic marketing standpoint. This film said, forget that, because now we're #1. Same year, we had Mad Max Fury Road come out. Now, this is another franchise. So Star Wars is a generally male predominant franchise. And if you don't, and it's funny that people, like a lot of times women will tell me, like, well, I like it. I'm like, yes. Maybe it's like 70-30, but it's still predominantly male. And if you go onto like social media and you post something about Star Wars, 99% of the comments you receive are dudes that are like fighting you or defending you. But it's a predominantly male franchise. But now we have a female lead leading this male predominant franchise to the top. And now we have Mad Max, another predominantly male franchise. And this was a little tricky. Mad Max is in the film, portrayed by Tom Hardy, but he's really sidelined in favor of Charlize Theron's Furiosa. And this film also did very well, not just at the box office, but in critical acclaim, and it did very well at the Academy Awards for that year. And so here's two male franchises with female leads, both successful. And I think that changed the mindset. And what happened next year? Ghostbusters, the all-female Ghostbusters came out.
Oh, Lord, that's when it got my attention.
Right. So what else came out in 2016? Finding Dory came out. Rogue One came out. Zootopia, Suicide Squad, Moana, which is, by the way, Moana is one of the best Disney films to come along in decades. I love Moana.
I love Moana.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with Moana. I have no criticism for it. But it is a female centric story. She's very heroic in it, and I would not classify her as a girl boss whatsoever. In fact, in my book, I studied her and used her in numerous examples as such a great example of archetypal archetypal events and heroine-centric stories. And Ghostbusters, by the way, became a cultural like lightning rod. There was an election year, and it was like, if you don't like this movie, you support one candidate, and if you like it, you support the other. So they positioned themselves with that film as female-centric, taking a side in political events outside of the pop culture space. And so now you've got this sort of antagonism, I would say, with the fan base. And this film did not age well. It did okay at the box office. I went back and looked, but I would say it has not aged well, and it is not something that is universally considered to be a positive force in the pop culture space. So 2017, what comes out? Now you're getting a lot more of these movies. The Last Jedi featuring Rey, which took this juggernaut, restored, revitalized, male-dominated franchise with a female lead and just took it off the rails. The Last Jedi. You have a remake of Beauty and the Beast. You have Wonder Woman comes out, and I love Wonder Woman, by the way, the 2017 version.
I did
Hidden
too.
Figures comes out, which is another good quality, great film. Star Trek Discovery Season 1 comes out, which was not that great. Handmaid's Tale comes out that year. The Marvelous Miss Maisel comes out that year. And then in 2018, you get Incredibles Part 2, in which Mrs. Incredible takes the forefront. You get Ralph Breaks the Internet, in which Ralph is not positively portrayed, and Vanellope comes up to the front. You get Ant-Man and the Wasp coming in, and then a remake of Halloween. And in 2019, I think it's peak level, where you get Toy Story 4, Frozen 2, Captain Marvel, The Rise of Skywalker, Maleficent Part 2, Alita Battle Angel, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Men in Black Part 3, Dark Phoenix, Terminator Dark Fate, Star Trek Discovery Season 2, a feminist remake of Charlie's Angels, a movie called The Aeronauts, which I want to talk about in a second, and then The Hustle, which is a female version of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. And The Aeronauts is particularly interesting because it's about a historical event. It's about a historical event of two male hot air ballooners who I think circumnavigate the world. What do they do in this movie? They replace one of the actual male historical figures with a woman who didn't even exist for this historical event, and put her in the Aeronauts. What are you doing? So anyway, it was a bizarre. That's not even revisionist history. That's like incorrect history. That's just like blatantly incorrect, and tends to elevate women or a woman for something that never happened. To me, there's plenty of things women have done in real life that we should be honoring. You don't have to make something up and say it's for the sake of advocacy. So the list goes on, but you see how this ratcheted up pretty quickly after 2015. I don't have a lot of examples prior to 2015 of just overt, girl bosses as defined in that first part.
Right.
So yes.
Thank you.
Anyway, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was going to say thank you for catching me up, because this didn't start to get onto my radar until Ghostbusters 2016. Like I saw Force Awakens. I was ready for that because I was like, oh, first new Star Wars movie, Disney's supposed to do it. Okay, it's probably going to be pretty good. But I didn't get a chance to see it in the theater. I'd seen it like later on.
Oh wow!
But the whole cultural shift again didn't hit until Ghostbusters 2016. Milo Yiannopoulos gets kicked off of X or Twitter at the time because he had the nerve to say that film wasn't all that good and Leslie Jones wasn't really all that attractive. Well, Jack wound up getting Milo Yiannopoulos kicked off of Twitter because of that. And that is when this film got on my radar. I'm like, Ghostbusters, wait a minute. They're all men. Janine is kind of like the unofficial, sixth Ghostbuster, I guess that's what you would say. But she was the only woman I was aware of. What are you talking about? All of these Ghostbusters are women. It's not like it's a next generation and they're the daughters of the original Ghostbusters. Right. Okay. It wasn't something like that, like, hey, this is the family business. It's like, no, this is not a traditional female type of role to have, but it's our legacy, and we're rolling with it. But we did not get that. It was
right.
You're putting all these women in here who usually most of them are funny, but in this movie were not funny at all. Terrible. I think I laughed like maybe twice, and it was maybe about an hour into the film. You had Chris Hemsworth character who was basically a himbo in the whole entire thing, making him seem like he's that he's the villain, and just these women just around not doing anything remotely related to Ghostbusters. And I'm like, that film franchise is a pop culture standard in America, but yet you're going to take this and you're going to do this gender swap without any grounding in the true source material, unlike, say, with Ghostbusters Afterlife, which they retcon that in like 2 sentences. Yeah, no one's seen a ghost around since in 30
Yeah,
years.
totally.
And
Totally.
I thought that was perfect. And the way that they set that up, I'm like, okay, that was great. But yeah, but for me, it didn't get on my pop culture radar until Ghostbusters 2016.
Right.
And I'm just like,
Right.
what the heck is happening here to
So I
put
do
women
think,
in films just to do it?
right. I do think that the shift came from signals, real signals in the pop culture space from general audiences that we now have an appetite for um, female leads, even if it's a male predominant franchise. And I think they're like, oh, grab everything you got and throw a woman in it. Let's go. The audience is chomping at the bit. And then when audiences started to like not respond to something like Ghostbusters, they're like, oh, well, maybe you're just a bunch of a-holes who don't like women. Like, that's our story and we are sticking to it. So now you've got guys like me who are not misogynistic, haters of women. I wrote a book on it. Like, this is a subject that I'm passionate about. But now I'm being called something that I'm not on an almost daily basis in a very antagonistic way. But like the legacy media and all the little minion sites that are set up. So what do you want me? How do you expect me to react to that? Calling me the worst names you can think of, equating me to the highest level of bigotry possible because I didn't like your movie. Like, I don't know, it seemed pretty heavy-handed to me. And I noticed it a little bit with The Force Awakens, but that was a success. So they didn't say much. But with The Last Jedi, which I hated, The Last Jedi went off the rails, and that's when they cranked it up to a 10. They're like, misogynistic fan base, bigoted, terrible people. Everyone's racist. Everyone's bad. I was like, what strategy is this? So I think a lot of fans who did not feel that way took it very personal, being called those names for accurately speaking their mind on how they felt about a movie. Which by the way, you, me, anyone in any fandom has voiced our opinions about movies since we were like old enough to speak. Even during movie trailers, like, oh, I want to see that one. Oh, that one was stupid. That's what we do. That's what we are as a fandom. We're judges. We're consumers. We end up buying all the the figurines and the collectibles and the vinyl records and the magazines and this is something that we place on a very high level in our lives. It's part of our identity. It's something that some of us take the time to pursue as a profession, either directly, indirectly. Coming here on YouTube, where you and me have connected to each other and are talking to each other because of a mutual love of these stories. And you're even taking it to the other level of what can we do to help bring great female characters back with the respect that a lot of them deserve. It would be we want good cultural figurehead heroines in our stories, but we don't want the bad ones. So anyway, that's what we're trying to like dig into, I guess.
Absolutely. And just to back up a little bit, kind of like where I started realizing things were just, it felt like I was taking crazy pills. Let's put it that way. You had Ghostbusters 2016. Then you had the Charlie's Angels reboot, unsexy reboot. And I'm like, what the heck is this? And they're just like, oh, men didn't watch it, so they're misogynist or whatever. And I'm thinking, no, because you didn't have Drew Barrymore, you didn't have Lucy Liu, you didn't have Cameron Diaz doing sexy, dangerous stuff. And I'm like, it can't be me. I'm like, I remember people like those characters. They like those three actresses together. So why all of a sudden you do this? You put this thing out that no one really wants, and you want to blame the audience. Also with Dark Fate, like I love the Terminator movies, even the not so great ones. But I was like, I can give it a pass. But as soon as I heard about Dark Fate, I said, they did what to John Connor? I mean, that literally was Sarah Connor's entire world, and the world was able to survive because of John Connor. You mean to tell me he got prison shanked within 5 minutes into the movie? I said, I cannot believe that. What is going on in Hollywood that they want to do this? And that's kind of when I started to go onto, YouTube and see what other people were talking about,
Yes.
because just pedestrian is just like, it's like Hollywood had completely lost their mind.
Yeah. Yeah, because there was never a phase in Hollywood that this reminds me of, where it became almost an adversarial relationship between the studios and the fandoms that they're supposed to be making the movies for. It was hard to understand the logic of that strategy, of having so many people in the media, a unified message saying, you all suck. I was like, what? And by the way, that's when I think a lot of people found YouTube. They took to YouTube to voice their displeasure with this, and they started connecting to other people. And in some ways, I felt like the love and the what I call the sacred fire of Hollywood, the great storytelling of Hollywood, it was like alive and well on YouTube from people who were keeping it alive, like Retro Nerd Girl doing a watch party of War of the Worlds. She's keeping that flame alive by getting people to sit around and watching an older film. You're keeping it alive, by talking about it, discussing it, having this discussion here. So hopefully Hollywood wants to keep it alive instead of trying to douse it out. So hopefully one day we'll look back like, remember when Hollywood was a real D? remember those
the dark times?
Totally.
Oh man, yeah, it's like they need to get back on track with giving us, the stories and television series and movies and stuff that the people love, then at the same time also not insulting your fan base.
I should probably add to my criteria, since we've been talking, you've said a couple things. I think I should add a certain lack of respect for the IP itself as a criteria. So if it's a female lead, and this could be actually a male lead too at this case, or at this level, general irreverence for like Star Wars, in the Star Wars film, talking about Star Wars as if it's stupid, not good. Like that's all. I think that's also symptomatic. Or why a female lead character might be labeled a girl boss if she also is like, "Hi, I'm in your Star Wars film, and Star Wars sucks," and it's in the dialogue there. Then you're not going to win many people over, at that point.
No, and you brought up a really painful memory, but I sat through it because I would not be called misogynistic for talking about it. And that would be the Disney Plus Marvel series She-Hulk.
Oh.
I collected comic books. I didn't really collect She-Hulk because it's like I only had a limited amount of money. So it was X-Men comic book, Spider-Man comic book, a icy, and a pack of Skittles. That was my money. That was my money. But I knew who She-Hulk was. Yeah. And I would see the panels. I knew who she was. I knew she was Bruce Banner's cousin. I knew all of that. I knew she kind of had this cross between really sexy, but I'm this tall green chick. How the heck am I supposed to make it, through the world? And she does. And I thought, this is what I'm going to get. We're basically going to get a Marvel version of Ally McBeal. And I'm like, I'm all there for it. I'm all there for it. I said, I want to see this. And the first thing we see, complaining to her cousin, I'm a woman and I have it harder than you and I have to conceal rage all the time. I'm just like,
that was a terrible speech. Terrible speech. I would say in general, as a writer, you don't want one character saying to another character, you know, my life's so much tougher than you. You don't understand. You're down here, I'm up here. Dude, we don't talk like that in real life to people. Why would you have characters talk like that? You know, people honestly usually try to find common ground. Usually when they're talking, when you're on like a panel or this, or if I'm meeting you somewhere, we try to find common ground. So to hear a character go off on this tangent of how totally different we are was bizarre, to say the least.
Extremely bizarre. And I'm watching this and I'm telling people, I'm like, you know, the show, they hate men. You know that, right? This is the joke throughout this whole entire series, and they're being very blatant about it. So they can tell men online, oh, you're a misogynist, you don't know what you're talking about or whatever. But I'll say, I see what you're doing. And it's like, oh, you're just a horrible person. I'm like, no, I see what you're doing. You're demonizing men. You're making men the butt of the joke. And at the same time, also making femininity the butt of the joke at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a weird, and it's kind of even new, a weird move toward anti-femininity, as if femininity itself is a box that contains women. And so any possible definition or boundary there for what being feminine is shattered. And you're left with something that is very hard to relate to. And by the way, sexiness is always going to be great, male or female, right? When I walk down when I'm in the bookstore and I walk down all I see are pecs and abs. It's there's dudes on the flex. I'm like, dude, chicks like this stuff too. Come on. So girls, boys, we all love sexiness. So having it in films, having women as beautiful is absolutely okay, and it needs to be coming back. I can definitely agree that there are sometimes very adverse ways to do this. You can have a reductive or very objectifying portrayal of women, but there's also, that's an extreme version. You can also have a totally beautiful woman on screen that we're going to be like, wow, look at her. And she's still awesome. So, and same would go with guys. You can have a good looking guy on the screen. It's funny. I remember watching Thor Ragnarok with my family, and my mom was in the room, and there's some scene with Chris Hemsworth with his shirt off. And my mom's like, whoa, like she was like freaking. I was like, Mom, I got you. But, sexiness is fine, but keep it in there. You don't have to make women look unattractive to rectify something. And that's that first criteria I came up with. If a heroine's designed, is created in the spirit of rectifying real or perceived social inequities, then what you're really doing as a writer is you are ordering your heroine off of a menu. I'll take her strong, but not sexy. I don't want the male gaze in here. I don't want that. So you're literally ordering these characters up off the menu, and that's not a true creative spirit. That's not coming from a creative place. That's coming from outside into the character, and that's why they fail to resonate usually, in my opinion.
No, I 100% agree because, well, did you see Deadpool and Wolverine?
I loved it.
Okay, so
yes.
Folks, you should have seen the darn movie by now. So the scene where he and Deadpool are trying to save the world basically, and Hugh Jackman's costume just starts coming off, and all you see are just rows and rows of abs. And he comes in, and the lady for the TVA, she's like,
totally.
I'm like, they totally put that in there on purpose, because I said, I really have no idea. I just remember Hugh Jackman's abs. I have no idea what the heck else happened. Really.
You don't remember the plot, but
I said, I saw that, and I said, and I appreciated that, and also appreciated that the way they wrote it not only was like the mature lady fanning herself, but the other guy from the beginning of the movie was
the bureaucratic guy.
too. that was perfect, and it just shows it's just like whether you're male or female, we like looking at, you know, good looking people, and there is power in femininity. Like another case in point, I'll bring up
Absolutely.
another movie. One of my franchises that I didn't really get to watch that much of it as a kid because I wasn't allowed to, and that would be the James Bond franchise.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Whenever they had to set up a trap, it wasn't a guy. They would send a very beautiful woman to do that because exactly because it worked. Now, when the film was it No Time to Die? I still have not seen that. I can't bring myself to watch it, but other people have watched it and have told me it's like the sexiness of the women in the Bond universe are gone. They served a purpose for using their looks because they knew they had to do that. You know, that was a thing that they could do that the male agents could not. There was just that balance that was going on. And the whole thing of the Bond girl was a highly revered character. It's like there's a new James Bond movie. Who's the Bond girl?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And you're right. That was like a red carpet casting. You're like, you get to be the Bond girl. And it's funny. I asked my mom. I was talking to because my mom and I would have a lot of discussions about heroines because she knew some of them from kind of before my time. And she loved James Bond. And I always thought to myself, I'm like, if you listen to all the criticism out there, women hate James Bond because he's a womanizer. There's all these like sexified women in there, and that's bad. And I was like, but my mom loved James Bond, because by the way, James Bond was a sex symbol for women. Guys would watch him and be like, oh man, I hope I can, man, I want to be like this guy. And women would be like, man, I hope he tries that line on me. So he was a sex symbol himself. So it wasn't just the Bond women that were sexy and catching. He was doing the same thing on the other side. So, and like I said, my mom loved James Bond. And she remembers when those movies were coming out in, I think, the late 60s, right? Is that right? The first James Bond were in the 60s. Yeah, 62. And then Goldfinger came out. These were like epic. These were like event moment back then, the big James Bond movies coming out. So yeah, put the sexiness back in. Don't listen to the critics on that. Human beings aren't going to change, and we're not going to change. We're not going to change. We are going to like sexiness 1,000 years from now, guaranteed. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Did you and it depends on how much time you want to spend, and we could save it for later if you want. But I did try to go through and analyze from 2015 to even up to the modern day movies that are putting female leads in for better or for worse, because not all of it's bad, by the way. In fact, there's plenty. There's a lot of great heroine-centric films that have come out as well. But I came up with a list of different types different ways that this happens. And because it's not all the same.
Yeah, I think I can show this. So we'll let the audience go along with us.
And I sent you a second version of it. Did you get the second version?
I think this is the second version.
Okay. Yeah, so this is a list of me just like writing down films with female leads year by year, and it blew up after 2015. That's why I can pinpoint that year.
Wow! As the year because look, it's like a little bit, and then boom.
Yeah, I mean just tons. And by the way, I'd be driving and I'd think of one. I'd be like, oh, okay, and then I'd forget it. So there's a lot that I that are like big ones that I forgot that aren't even on this list. But I tried to go through and analyze. It's not just whether they cast a female lead. So the girl boss era, the girl boss phenomenon does have certain characteristics to it that I think were worth analyzing. Why was there a female lead cast? And was there anything unusual about how this female lead came to be cast in the specific movie? One of the most important things I'd like to point out is that most of these films were existing IPs. And I think that is important because an existing IP does come with a certain set of expectations. And for most of these strategies for getting a female lead into the film, there are good examples and bad examples. They're not all bad. There are plenty of examples of where they added a female lead and it was excellent. I actually liked Mad Max Fury Road. I don't like Force Awakens. Yeah, I liked it. And by the way,
I didn't like Furiosa was okay, but when I went back and I watched Fury Road, I'm like, that's where it should have ended because it was well, I really liked it.
I totally agree with you. I really liked Fury Road. I liked Furiosa, but I think you just said it, and this is probably why it failed at the box office. Fury Road told the story of Furiosa and her epic confrontation to become iconic, right? And then this is like the prequel in which she has an epic confrontation. So it's like, well, if she already did this, I don't know. I felt like they missed me in the marketing because she already did this big epic thing. So she did one before. There was part one of the epic. So, but I actually liked it. I've seen it twice, and it's actually very watchable. But it's hard to. They should not have marketed it as a Mad Max story. He's not even in it. They should have just came right out and said, this is Furiosa's prequel. This is a Furiosa movie. I think it would have been more honest to do that. And you would have given us a chance to pick that movie for that reason, rather than maybe, like you said, being guarded. It looks like a Girlboss movie, right?
Yeah, because that's how it was set up. That's how, how the trailer looked. And that's the impression that you got, that it was just this girl boss film. And I know that's why a lot of people didn't go see it initially. And I'm like, okay, I'll fall in that grenade because they can't call me sexist if I didn't like it. So I came back and I said, it was okay. Definitely not a girl boss, but honestly, you can just go watch Fury Road, and Fury Road is actually a much better film. Furiosa was a film that it really didn't have a reason to exist, really. That's kind of how I felt about it.
You know how Force Awakens was basically a reskin of A New Hope in a lot of ways?
Yeah.
This felt like the reskin of Fury Road. And it's like, that movie's it hasn't even aged yet. We don't need. So it's the same general story in a large way. And so it was largely unnecessary. But it is watchable. But like you said, if you're going to watch it, might as well watch Fury Road. If you're going to spend 2 hours in that universe.
And it was done so much better. I love that.
The art direction in that first one.
Yeah, I liked Furiosa. Okay, I mean, I could watch it again. It's actually on streaming, but yeah, Fury Road was great.
Yeah, it was great, and the design, I'll never forget. It was so crazy, but I'll never forget that guitarist dude. he had this like flaming spout. He was like jamming on this guitar, and he was like leading the assault. I was like, that is so crazy. But it sticks in your head. It was great art direction. That was awesome.
100%. 100%. For 2020, because I'm looking at these, Wonder Woman. Oh no, that was 84. Oh no, no, skip that one.
That was a bad film.
That was.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm saying, yeah, it was horrible. I liked the first Wonder Woman movie. And the best thing about Wonder Woman 1984 was the end credit scene.
What was the end credit scene? I forgot.
Or was it mid credits? That's when you saw Linda Carter.
Oh yeah, I had a huge crush on her as a boy.
That was literally the best part of the film, because I'd watched it with my sister because we hadn't seen it, so we watched it and we're like, I think I really liked it.
And what a shame, because Wonder Woman in 2017 nailed it. They got her. I thought that
They
perfect
did.
casting with Gal Gadot. It was exciting. There was some iconic scenes that are hard to forget, like her crossing no man's land and then putting up the shield while the German are like. There's some great stuff in there, and they could have had the Wonder Woman trilogy, but they veered off so quickly with 1984 that now it's done. There's nothing left.
That's crazy. The Invisible Man, I really liked.
That was not bad. Right. That was actually good. God, I saw it when it came out because that was kind of a movie starved era. But my wife and I, we both watched it. We both liked that one.
Yeah, that one was great. Birds of Prey, I lasted 10 minutes watching that, and I could not, because first of all, with some people don't like Suicide Squad, I did, if anything, for Harley Quinn's outfit. That was the most popular female costume for Halloween that year for so many reasons. And I thought that was the Harley Quinn that I was going to get in Birds of Prey. And nope, we didn't get her. And I'm like, I'm out, because that's what I expected. They wanted to make it just this man-hating film, and I'm just like, I'm not interested in sitting through that.
Well, and now we know that a lot of these companies have hired outside consulting firms basically to tell them how to do this. In the name, I tried to be as open-minded as possible, and these outside consulting firms, in the name of equity, diversity, and inclusion, or whatever, they're trying to say, here's how you do it. And I just think they're wrong about how to do it. But now we know that they come in and they tell them, don't put her in the sexy costume. That's the male gaze. Don't have her get rescued by this guy. She doesn't need a guy to rescue her. She has to rescue herself. And so they'll advise them how to do this. And then you get a character that just does not work on screen. It's a waste. This, you know what, Lorena, this could have been a golden age of heroines. Imagine if look at all those movies. Imagine if they didn't have outside advisors and they had genuine creatives working on this without interference. Who knows what could have come out of all of this?
You're 100% right, because I'm looking at these, and Gretel and Hansel, I didn't see. I purposely skipped over that. I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna watch that. Doctor Who, I knew about Dr. Karen. I knew about Jodie Whittaker. The only thing I saw her in was a movie called Attack of the Block, and frankly, she shouldn't have been in that because she was horrible. So I didn't know anything about Doctor Who except that the doctor was always a man. So I'm like, what's going on? Why the switch? What's going on
even
here?
If they, I think you could do Doctor Who with a woman, but I think you just have to write it with some reverence for the IP. I think that by itself, without social messaging in there, and a female doctor who really cares about being a doctor, not trashing what came before, it could work. It could totally work. That's what and I think you and I are in agreement on this. I don't mind. I love having great women in pop culture space. It's great. I love it. It doesn't matter the race, the gender. I don't care what they are. The idea that they fight for all of us is really all I need to know and to kind of win me over. But a lot of these heroines, they're not fighting for me. They're fighting against me. For people that look just like themselves. And I think that that's severely limiting in terms of their appeal and the degree of nobility in their quest, So
even in and I see it right there with 2020 with Picard.
Oh yeah.
That so first of all, I loved Next Generation, Star Trek Next Generation. Loved Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Loved that character. He's a great character. I'm thinking with this Picard series, it's like he's the most interesting man in Starfleet, you know, seeing him possibly recounting stuff that happened and like, yeah, maybe I should have did that differently, or nah, I'm fine doing that exactly how, you know, exactly how I did it. And seeing all these people basically revering all his experience, or he's running into new experiences that he didn't think about exposing before. You know, just we're always fascinated with how Jean-Luc Picard could just draw you in when he's talking about a story or giving examples of his life, or for example, showing what happened when he got stabbed in the heart, which is why he's got a fake one. You know,
Right.
that's what I thought we were going to see. You know, was he going to run into the same problem with, you know, Kirk? Like, I don't want to do this admiral thing. I just want to go on a starship and, you know, bump around the galaxy and everything. But no, what did we get with Picard? We got women basically cussing him out. He's no longer this revered hero with all of this experience and valuable knowledge. It's just some doddering old man that's there, and they replace him with a freaking robot at the end. It just seems so disrespectful, and even more disrespectful that you had all of these women treating him as if he were nothing. And
Yeah, like
it's the other girl
overtly
boss part
talking
I saw
down to
that.
him.
Yes.
Yeah. To be honest, if they brought in an old Linda Carter to portray Wonder Woman and a bunch of dudes were talking down her, being like, you sucked, actually. When I go back and look at your great heroic moments, you actually sucked. I would hate that just as much. You know, a bunch of people talking down to a hero or a heroine because they weren't perfect. That was like the logic of The Last Jedi. It's like the Jedi need to be destroyed because they made mistakes. And it's like, wrong. The Sith are bad. The Jedi made mistakes, but that's different from being overtly evil. Overtly evil is still worse than trying to be good and making mistakes. And like, so anyway, Picard was in that spirit too. It's like, well, you didn't do it perfectly, and so now we're going to denounce you. We're gonna pretty much call you out on everything we don't like about you. And I don't. So again, that was irreverent toward the IP, but also done in the spirit of rectifying real or perceived social inequities, and it goes off into that direction, and very few people go with them.
Absolutely. Let's see, I'm looking in. Okay, so 2021. Oh, okay. Black Widow, I liked, but Black Widow's dead. So it's kind of just like, why I get why it exists, and it definitely wasn't that people did not like Black Widow. A lot of people did like that character, but the movie just seemed to show up kind of like an afterthought, I think. And I don't even know if I would really even call it any serious girl bossness that was in there, because you've got a bunch of women in this. You know, they are assassins. It's definitely going to be female oriented, although I think no, it wasn't Red Skull. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting her father, even though the joke that he couldn't fit. He just barely
Red Guard. Is it Red Guard?
Yes.
Red Guardian. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that movie, I think there was some social equity rectification thinking in the writing, not necessarily embodied in the Black Widow necessarily. I think they did gender swap like Taskmaster, and there was the villain was extremely underwhelming, you know.
Oh my gosh, yes, she was horrible.
I mean, what were they thinking with that guy? I mean, she basically smashed his head. I mean, there was a lot of bad writing, I think, that plagued that film. And you're totally right. I don't know anyone who doesn't like the Black Widow as a character, but I know a lot of people that didn't like her movie. But I think it was, you know what I didn't like about that movie? Now that you think about it, it wasn't that she was a girl, but she was kind of upstaged by Florence Pugh's character.
That's right. Yeah, she was.
Yeah. she's kind of upstaged by her, and it was like, and she was being irreverent. So I think Florence Pugh's character had kind of the girl boss problem, not Black Widow, because Florence, what was her name? Not Natasha. Yelena?
Yeah,
Anyway,
I think that was it.
Yeah, she was making fun of Black Widow. She was making fun of superheroes and the superhero stance and
She's like,
and
you
all
do the
those things.
superhero pose where you do this and then you hold your hair back like that. I'm thinking, what's wrong with that pose? I freaking love that pose.
Yeah, it was kind of funny, but then like on second take, it's like, but we're in a Marvel film, so make fun of it somewhere else. This is where we want to see the superhero, landing.
Exactly. Oh, Eternals. I only saw 10 minutes of that, and I tapped out.
That was really bad. So a lot of these were played with really bad writing. Cruella was actually okay, but she's a villain. They kind of they're trying to, like, I don't know. There's this weird admiration for villains all of a sudden.
There is this trend, and it started with the first Maleficent film, which pissed me off when I saw it, because Maleficent is the OG Disney villain. She is unrepentantly evil, and I thought the story that we were going to get was, seeing her make that descent into evil, kind of seeing how Anakin Skywalker turned into Darth Vader. That's what I thought we were going to get with Maleficent, but no, we're made to feel sorry for her. And I had the same issue with Cruella. Now, the Glenn Close version did it the best. She was 80s crazy, and I'm like, this chick, she wants a coat made out of the pelt of, little Dalmatian puppies. That's disgusting. And it makes you angry. And that's why you want these puppies, to escape. But with this one, it's like, oh, Cruella, she's an icon. You should be, you should like her. She's a fashion icon. She's a dollar store and a wind tower is pretty much what I called it, because that's exactly what she was. I said, I'm tired of making it. No one wants to, there's not really interest in seeing that and trying to make these villains likable in a good way. They're just misunderstood. They're not, there's no black and white. And that I was just like, I didn't like that.
That's a weird line of thought creeping into pop culture that I am shocked. It was in The Acolyte. They did that there as well. This idea that good and evil is purely subjective, and that the people who think they're good are actually just as bad as the people who think they're evil. And so why are we so mad at the people that are evil? And you hear it in interviews, you hear it in the dialogue in these films. And it's a fundamental mistake to think that, because we've seen evil in the world. We've seen it. We've read about it. Humanity's been up close to it. And to forget those lessons is an egregious error. That's how you're doomed to repeat these things. If you don't think there's evil out there, then you're making a big mistake.
Yeah. Same thing like with WandaVision. I thought we were going to get Mephisto as the big bad, like, in exchange for you getting these children, this is what you have to do for me. We thought there was going to be maybe some kind of Faustian bargain that was in there. And we didn't even get that. They said, well, the villain was grief. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
The villain? Yeah.
WandaVision was one of the first big new projects after Endgame. So we were all there. Marvel had all of us. And WandaVision started out brilliantly, in my opinion, because
it did.
They were very creative. They did something new. There was some nostalgia and, like, the I Love Lucy, style that they were trying to capture. And it seemed like they were onto something great. And the last 3 episodes, they pulled a Game of Thrones on me, where they told such an incoherent story once you understood it, that the whole thing got tainted. And unfortunately, WandaVision has turned into a non-event after what seemed to be so promising a show. And she did I think you were trying to make this point a second ago. She did some pretty evil stuff. You know, she like basically enslaved a bunch of people, took away their free will, forced them to role play this fantasy, and they portrayed it as, well, this is certainly understandable. That's like, whoa, what? Understandable? She's the villain. You know, what are we doing here?
Oh, yeah, that was so disappointing. And then, well, Hawkeye, I really didn't have a good or a bad opinion about it. It was kind of there. It just kind of looked like Home Alone Marvel style for the most part. So the only thing that I didn't like with Hawkeye is it just seemed that oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the female character's name.
Kate
Seemed
Bishop.
like yeah, that she was just doing basically everything right.
Right.
There wasn't really there wasn't there wasn't a hero's journey in there. There wasn't like a lesson learned. I really didn't think she was really that likable. I thought the mom was actually more likable than she was. And turns out she was, you know, running the whole thing. Discovery, I didn't watch. No Time to Die. Yeah, I couldn't watch that one because just I'm like Bond is. I didn't. Granted, I have my issues with Skyfall. I just let it rest for the most part. I was okay with that. Just, you know, go ahead and let that in there. Afterlife, I did like.
I liked Afterlife. I put it in there because it was female centric. I think Phoebe really became the center of gravity for the reboot for Ghostbusters, and her relationship with her mother, who, you know, also a female character. Where there was plenty of male characters in it, but I think Phoebe kind of anchored it a little bit, and I thought she did really good.
Yeah, I thought so too. I like the idea of her being, you know, Egon Spengler's granddaughter. And while her mom is one way, you can tell she's obviously just as eccentric, if not more so, than Egon was. So I think that was a cool way to portray it. So I did like that. And you're right, she had like this grounding effect, you know, with everybody around her in the film.
She was likable. I think she was a very likable hero.
She was very, very likable with all of her quirks and everything. It just, you know, it just fit Masters of the Universe.
That was they call it a bait and switch. I have a different name for it now because bait and switch to me is really a marketing term, meaning that it was marketed as though it were male centric, and it was not. And obviously, the male predominant fan base will take issue with that if you market it as, "Hey, this is all about He-Man." No, it's not. We're kidding. It's about her. That's gonna probably tick off your audience, but that's only a marketing issue. Once it's out and the show or the film has to stand alone for the next 50 years, what's the problem with it? So and we could talk about this on a different time, but I have different forms of female leads coming into these IPs that take on different patterns, and that's one specific pattern.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a second one because there's so much good stuff, in there to discuss, and I loved how you broke it down. But yeah, with the Masters of the Universe, it's just with the way that Tila was, it was like the Tila show. Everything's around, me, the whole entire thing, and that just really irritated me as someone who's been a female fan of He-Man ever since. And then, you have this happen. Arcane, I really did like.
I loved Arcane. Loved it. Unequivocally, it's a 10 out of 10 for me. Totally female-centric, by the way. Female villains, female leads. It's got LGBT female character in the, multiple, like, Arcane pretty much dominated because it focused on storytelling first and everything else came second. And that's all you got to do for me. put any type of person in any type of story, but tell me the story, and I'm going to fall in love with these characters. And Arcane just hit it out of the park for me.
Oh, it sure did. I loved it. Granted, I loved the animation, as well, but the story was great. And I was just like, I need a season 2 like yesterday.
Season 2 comes out in November, right?
Oh yeah.
Season 2 is coming out in November, so we got hopefully some great stuff on deck.
I'm waiting for it. I'm so excited for it. Man.
Yeah, and by the way, nobody calls Vi a girl boss in a negative way. Like, she's legitimately a tough chick. She's tough. She's an older sister to a younger sister. She makes difficult calls. She gets her ass kicked in some scene. Like, when she's in fights, I'm like, ooh, man, Vi, she's taking a beating. And when she wins, she's like crawling away. She barely wins. And that's how you're going to win me over. Don't show me a female heroine who's just steamrolling everybody. That's super boring. Same thing if it was a male lead. It's boring if they're not struggling. When Indiana Jones is up against that German boxer, and the boxer's knocking him down, and you're like, ooh, Indy, this is not your best day. It buys your sympathy for the character. You don't look at him and be like, oh, dude, this guy's garbage because he just got beat. You're like, oh man, I hope he gets up. You want to see vulnerability out of lead characters.
You do, because you want to be able to relate to them. Everyone can relate to having a failure or persevering despite everything that's stacked up against you. People want to see, they want to see that. They don't want to see everything. Oh, let's just hand it to you. Yeah. I could fight that person easily. I can be, a 90-pound woman soaking wet, and I can beat up 6, 200-pound guys that are taking their time coming at me one by one, as if that's realistic.
And to be perfectly honest, in the guy world, there's a lot of range of ability. So I'm a smaller guy. And I've been in fights, especially when I was a kid. You don't just throw around bigger guys. You got to be really careful, because even if you're in an actual fight and the guy's bigger than you, there's a great chance he's going to get you. And he's going to get you because he's stronger. Maybe he's got better range. So even as a guy, like, if I were to watch movies with these little dudes that are my size throwing around Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'd be like, that's just not how it is, dude. That's not how it is. So even from the male side, there's a range. And so anyway, I'm with you. Like, the big guys have a huge advantage. Huge advantage.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh my gosh. 20. Oh, I didn't watch Loki. I noped out of the first episode. I was just like, this is I don't like what you did to my boy, so I just said no. I can't hang around and watch that. Wakanda. Oh Lord, this is like, I want to say between 2021, 2022 seemed to be I want to call it the peak for all of these except for let's see. I'll take House of the Dragon out of that equation, because in the actual story, that's how the actual story was laid out. Rhaenyra was appointed, Viserys's successor. He specifically wanted his daughter to succeed him, even though he knew the realm would not accept a woman on the Iron Throne. So that was an established story.
Right. That's
already.
respectful to the IP.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
and by the way, audiences rewarded the writers to House of the Dragon, which is totally female centric, by the way. Queen Alicent, Queen Rhaenyra, you had the older queen. There's a lot of women in House of Dragon, and I don't think any of them really come across as girl bosses at all. And audiences get into the show. And I have a funny feeling that season 3 is going to be epic. I actually, season 2 is a little bit of a dip.
Yeah.
but and I've talked about this with Retro, and she's a big fan. And she even says, "Hold out hope." So I think the third season is going to deliver, and I think House of the Dragon will cement itself as a great series.
Well, I certainly hope so, because I like watching it. Season 2, I'm kind of like, all
Yeah,
right,
they
season
didn't
3,
quite.
I better see you fire-breathing dragons all over the place.
Better do something.
But with Wakanda Forever, that really felt like a slap in the face. Not only the fact that, Chadwick, he passed away, they didn't recast him, but they decided to pass the mantle of Black Panther onto his sister. Now, I heard that it was in the comics and that it was a temporary thing that had happened, but they went from a very male-centric father-son story at the crux of it with Black Panther
Yes.
to Wakanda Forever. It's just all the women in that, and the men basically had no use except for just to stand there and basically hardly say anything, and it it was really disturbing.
Well, I think, and Wakanda Forever, I think, is a unique circumstance. Chadwick Boseman breathed life into a character who became iconic almost all at once. And the Black Panther movie was a phenomenon, one of the highest grossing superhero films of all time. And quite honestly, the movie itself is well written, but I would say the power of that film is carried prominently by Chadwick himself. The actor brought such a nobility to the character, such a physicality. He lit up the screen. He chewed it up every time he was on it. So, and then the worst, the actor passed away. And this is a tragic passing of a great actor. And I think the studio needed to read the room. This is not the time for a feminist take on the Black Panther. This is the time to take what Chadwick Boseman, in my opinion, what he built up as an iconic African American, or actually a Wakandan, a great character of African descent, superhero, apex level. I think you need to follow up on that. I think you need to follow up on that and recast the actor. They're recasting actors and all the time. Recast them and let's follow through on what he started. I think this was a terrible case of almost hijacking or like pushing that into this other direction that in some ways took 90% of what he built. It took a lot of it away with that follow-up film. And I think that's a huge mistake, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Doctor Strange, dude was a guest star in his own movie.
Yeah. The Scarlet, and that was another follow-up from WandaVision where the Scarlet Witch is really villain. And well, to be honest, that movie's a mess. That movie's a mess in a lot of ways. Hard to follow even. And Thor: Love and Thunder. Oh my God. You said if 2022 is the peak of this Girlboss issue, then this could be the top of the peak because this movie is unwatchable. I have not finished it. I tried watching it twice and I have failed to finish it both times. It's so unwatchable.
I saw that in the theater and I wanted to leave, but I had to sit through it and fall on that grenade. And I'm just like, this movie sucks. I would rather be any place else but here right now. And it was just awful. The Woman King I saw and just, it wasn't for me. I didn't care. I really did not. I didn't feel any kind of attachment to the characters really at all. And even if it was a quote matrilineal society, it's through the king's maternal line. But the whole thing was just based on these female warriors. I don't know the whole history of it, but the way that it was marketed was basically, it's all women and they're all women warriors, and they're going to overpower all of the men.
Well, there have been, and this is one of the instances of a female warrior tradition, right? And there are female warrior traditions, and they're great, but they are unusual in history. The warrior role is overwhelmingly fulfilled by men, historically speaking. But that doesn't mean that a story like this can't be told. But she was made up. My issue was that she's an invented character, which is one of my categories we'll get into, creating a historical event around a non-real person, I think is a mistake. Why don't you find a real person and follow her life, and let us just witness the unusual events that her life has, and then appreciate that real person for what she did. When you make one up, now I don't know what's real. I don't know if I trust the character or the reality of what's being portrayed. It makes it really difficult,
Yeah,
we have
speaking
the
of Rings of Power, now that I think about it, this is probably the one that we should end on, because this one, granted, I did not read the Tolkien novels because I was not into fantasy like that, but I had friends who read the books. I just watched the Hobbit cartoon and I'm content with that because I absolutely love it. The Peter Jackson movies came out. That was an event. I'm like, cool, I do not have to read the book. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to watch all the movies, and they were wonderful. And fantastic. I loved Kate Blanchett's depiction as Galadriel.
Totally.
I don't know who this Galadriel chick is in Rings of Power. She's nothing like the compassionate, very wise Galadriel.
Oh yeah,
in the Peter Jackson films.
It's mind-boggling what they did with her, and she is, I think, the flagship version of what a girl boss is. She might be at the top of this heap. Unlikable. She's a side character that was moved into the front of the entire franchise. They totally rewired her character, her history, and everything. And then this isn't her fault, but then they put this into the hands of mostly incompetent filmmakers, or at the very best, inexperienced filmmakers. And so the effect itself, the filmmaking power, just was collapsing in every scene. I would look at, when I would watch these episodes, I'd look into the background. I'm like, the sets don't even make sense. Like I had a problem with so much of Rings of Power that it'll have to be studied in college courses one day, because how do you achieve that level of disconnection from set to characters to relationship to lore, the acting in a lot of cases? Like it was befuddling to watch that play out. And by the way, we have front row seats, Lorena, to season 2. It's coming up.
I know Amazon keeps putting that trailer in front of me every time I fire up my Fire TV. I'm just like, no. Although I do like the dwarves. But
right on.
Everyone else, no. Everyone else is just no. I just like I can't. This chick is unlikable. I only care about the dwarves. The two actors they have with those two, there's a loving relationship between the two of them, and you actually feel for, okay, these are the dwarves and this is what they do, and this is their little community and everything.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, we'll see where they go with it here for season 2. But in terms of the girl boss, I think Galadriel, she's got to be up there. She's got to be in the top 3, up there with, I think, Rey Palpatine.
Mm-hmm.
And we could talk about this in part 2 if you want, but it's a worthy discussion because, like you, if we can identify what is actually bad, then it'll also help us identify what is good instead of lumping the good in with the bad. And I think that's the ultimate goal here,
Mm-hmm.
with this discussion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. To kind of help to be able to vet out what's truly this really dangerous and damaging girl boss trope as opposed to good writing. So that's kind of what we
Yeah.
want to
Well, and ultimately,
fill out.
the goal with heroic women in fiction is role models. You want women that will capture the imagination of general audiences, and when a young girl faces a real life problem in life, she has someone, events in these stories to draw upon. That'll help. It'll help. How did this heroine handle it? She kept her cool. She handled it this way, and now I have a model to do that myself. And that's the good stuff. That's what we want.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we have so much to unpack with this, so we will
Yeah.
definitely be back for yet another segment. We'll say interview part 2 of An Audience with the Queen here with Doug, because we have so much practical film examples to give you with
Mm-hmm.
those particular flavors of girl boss. Maybe that'll be the next one. The flavors of girl bossness that that appear in the movies. But Doug, as always, it's such an honor and a pleasure having you on my channel. Please let the people know where they can find you.
Well, you can find me on my website, douglasaburton.com. I am on Twitter under that, at douglasaburton.com, and I also have a Facebook author page. So I am the author of the Heroines Labyrinth, where I go into a deep dive on heroic women in fiction. It's positive. It's not a criticism of heroines. It takes some of the most effective patterns from hero-centric stories, and it's really presenting an alternative story structure comparable to the hero's journey, but it's not. It's an alternative. So, and Lorena, thank you for having me on. It's very generous of you, and I love talking to you. It's always a treat. Always.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I love having you on, Doug. These are great discussions. So thanks for bringing all your energy and yeah, and all of that, your energy and your expertise. I love hearing that from you. So folks, you know what to do. Make sure you're following Doug over there on X, checking out his website. Make sure you're subscribed to me, and we will see you next time. Bye.
All right. Good night, everybody.